Yo, what's going on guys, your boy Max here and welcome back to another video. In this video I'll be talking about how to win more close range fights in Fortnite. And close range fights are definitely something that you should practice because that's what a lot of fights actually come down to. You'll probably get into close range fights involving box fights and stuff like that, and that's just been super popular since way back in like season 7 and 8. And ever since then, box fights have pretty much been the meta because your shotgun is the most reliable weapon you will probably carry all the time, and that's pretty much why close range fights are so popular and why you need to get good at them. And I'm going to be sharing a bunch of tips today about how you can actually do that. So let me just mention that the gameplay you're seeing in the background is not from me, because honestly I haven't been enjoying Fortnite recently as much as I used to, and I hope that changes very soon when I do decide to buy my PC in hopefully around May or June time, but we'll see when that actually does happen. But yeah, the gameplay is from Booger. I'm sure that all of you do know who he is, but if you don't, then go check him out after watching this video. And without further ado, let's get into the tips and tricks that I promised. So the first tip we're going to be going into is do not jump all the time, and that is because it pretty much makes your movement super predictable. The occasional jumps are of course needed in close range fights because you have to avoid people, and you have to get certain angles that you just would not be able to get in positions where you're just standing still or crouching, such as jump shots from below to hit your opponent if they are above you. And that's something that you should be doing, but if you keep jumping unnecessarily all the time, it will make your movement super predictable and your opponents will basically be able to read you with ease. So definitely do not be jumping all the time for no reason. And moving into the second tip, we're actually going to be talking about going for the head. A nice little Thanos reference if you lot know, but you need to be going for the head because it can pretty much make or break your game, as a headshot gives you way more damage when you actually hit that headshot, because there's a multiplier on shotguns and literally on all other weapons that pretty much lets you hit double or more than double the damage that you would have hit if you were using a shotgun and hitting a body shot, say for example. So I'm sure all of you knew that anyway, however it ties perfectly into the next point which we're going to be going into right now, which is going to be utilizing peaks, and especially the right hand peak. And this is probably the most common thing you would have ever heard, apart from keeping the high ground in OG Fortnite, but this tip actually goes a longer way than you think. Using the right hand peek is super useful in today's game because you'll be able to get the jump on a bunch of players. And if you don't know what the right hand peek is, first of all, let me just explain that real quick. I promise it will only take like 20 seconds. So it's basically when you stand on the left side of a wall or a piece of cover, and you can basically see your opponent behind that piece of cover and they can't see you, and it is super useful for, first of all, scouting where your opponents are at, and secondly it's just super useful for getting the jump on your opponent and basically hitting them for a fat chunk of damage that will give you a massive advantage in the fight. And a lot of people like to go for edits with this sort of technique, and they would usually use the triangle edit. However, that's quite unreliable nowadays because a lot of people expect that edit, and you should actually be doing the top triangle edit instead of the bottom one that you're probably used to, and it will catch your opponents off guard. But not only that, it will also help you dictate the fight because you'll be less exposed behind that sort of triangle piece that is left on the bottom, and that will pretty much let you get even more of an advantage in the fight because your opponent will never know when you're gonna pop out from behind that cover and hit them with a jump shot. Next, let's talk about box fights, which is something that will literally teach you how to win more of those close range fights in Fortnite. And if you don't know what box fights is, it's basically a creative thing which is based around like a little small map where you're basically forced into SMG and shotgun fights, basically close range fights, as you know, the video is focused on that. And it's a super fun way to improve your gameplay, as well as something that will definitely improve your mechanics by a longer way than you think. I practiced box fights with my friends, and it was honestly, first of all, super fun, which I know a lot of you don't like aim courses because they're just kind of boring. And not only was it fun, but I was also able to improve my aim and my editing by a mile. And I definitely recommend you guys try this if you haven't already. I'm sure that most of you are already practicing this, but there are a ton of different maps that you can actually play that are revolved around box fights, and there's also realistic sort of 1v1 maps if you're, you know, more focused on getting better at purely just one versus one close range fights. So do take a look at that, and without any further ado, let's jump into the next tip. And this one is going to be a bit more advanced. You're basically going to want to bait your heals if you are a little bit low on the defense. And you know, baiting something like a mini can be very beneficial. You know, you can just start drinking that mini, and your opponent will basically start swinging or shooting at your wall, and then you can pop a quick edit and hit a shotgun shot on them, and more time you will basically get some super free damage that your opponent will just never be expecting, because not a lot of people bait heals from what I'm seeing, and it is a super beneficial way that you guys can just get, you know, easy shots off at your opponents in close range fights. And I do hope that that is useful. I know it's something that a lot of people don't even sort of think about, but you know, it definitely is useful, as I said. Next thing we're going to be talking about is piece control, and this is something that's been sort of more and more introduced and popularized by people like Benji and stuff like that, and for the right reasons, to be honest, because if you don't know what piece control is, first of all, it's owning you know, different walls and pieces basically in the fight. So say for example your opponent is healing and you have their wall and you're able to edit it, that is an example of piece control. And if you have, you know, a wall or a cone or a floor and a cone on your opponent and they're healing in that exact box, then you have a massive, you know, sort of a chance to hit a headshot or just a body shot or any type of shot, man, and you're basically getting free damage if you're able to, you know, have good piece control. There's far more complex examples that you'll encounter, such as blocking off your opponent with a wall when they are, you know, below your ramp, say for example, and then editing out and, you know, editing a window and hitting your opponent then. But you'll just figure that out with time, and if you are, you know, not the best player, then piece control is something that I wouldn't really worry about focusing too much, as long as you're always staying inside your own builds, because it is vital that you don't, you know, jump into your opponent's box nowadays. However, you know, that may change down the line. First of all, we did see traps being vaulted this season, and that's sort of changed the meta a lot. Controller players are, first of all, just crazier now, because 50-50s are something that has been taking place more and more, because there's no traps and people will just jump into your box and take their chances basically. But that's a very meta based tip. Jumping in isn't always super reliable, and something I wouldn't recommend doing if traps were added back into the game. However, for the time being, you might wanna, you know, try out just jumping in to your opponent's box and trying your chances with your shotgun if you are super stacked and have a lot of health. But just to summarize and reiterate a little bit, jumping into your opponent's box isn't the most dangerous thing nowadays. Well, anymore it isn't. It may change down the line, and I see it changing because a lot of people are complaining about this sort of meta. But piece control, as I was saying, all you want to do is not let your opponent get your wall or cone or floor, and just stay safe inside your box when you are healing up or if you are on the defense. And that is because if you don't own the walls or floors or ramps around you, it will be super easy to exploit you and pretty much finish you off in a fight. So do make sure that when you are healing and are on the defense that you own all of those parts. But yeah, that pretty much wraps it up. And if this video has helped you, then make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel with notifications on to never miss another upload from me ever again. And make sure to use the code MAXGAMER7 to help support the channel at no extra costs whatsoever. But on that note, I am out, guys. Peace.